Thank you very much. Assistant Sheriff.
Thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg. First and foremost, thank you so much for the community members that have taken the time to come share their thoughts on this item. It's very important for us to hear that feedback. Thank you to staff for this report. I'll certainly echo the comments of my fellow committee members here that have been shared with everybody. The one element that I want to make sure that we're also mindful of as we continue to move forward is, while certainly the intent here is to ensure that our incarcerated population receive the care and resources that they need and deserve while they are incarcerated, and to ensure that they are in a safe and secure environment, I also want to make sure that we're mindful of the impact that our jail facilities have on overall public safety throughout the county. And I'm glad to see that the intake area of our main jail is part of this plan, because with the new requirements of medical clearance for our incarcerated population coming into the facilities, while that's continuing to be refined and our staff are continuing to help facilitate that efficiency, when our officers throughout the county are stuck in intake for a long extended period of time, those are officers that are not in the community providing public safety. So the question that I do have for you, in addition to the intake center being relocated at Main Jail, has there been any discussion to also create an opportunity at Elmwood for a secondary intake center or capability for redundancy? And I'm thinking of this in two ways. If there was some sort of a catastrophic event that enabled our main jail intake, having a secondary space available to accommodate that is one path that I'm thinking. But then secondarily, if we have an influx of a major event in the county, FIFA, Super Bowl, or whatever the case may be, where we might have an increase in number of bookings, for our staff to be able to open up a secondary site to help reduce that lack of presence for our partner agencies out in the community.
To the question from the undersheriff, which is part of the idea behind pivoting the way we're using main jail, is that we would only ever take to Elmwood folks that we expect to hold in custody for longer periods of time. That environment, which allows for much more access to the outdoors, much more programming, much more healthcare to be delivered on that large campus, would afford those folks much greater opportunities than, for example, we currently offer in main jail today, for all of those services to be provided for people who actually do really need them, because they will be in our custody for months or years, not just days. Conversely, when we want to try and divert at intake booking as many folks. So one of the things that we explored, a little bit different than what you proposed or asked us about a potential for intake booking at Elmwood, and we will continue to look into, is what we've seen in some communities, which is adjacent to but separate from the jail, an opportunity where folks who may just need to be go through initial processing, but we know are then going to be cited and released by the sheriff's office, never go into the full intake booking area. They can be actually triaged into sort of a separate line where they never come into custody. The sheriff's office is able to do whatever processing it needs to do, and then they are right back out into the community because they're not going to be held, and to try and decompress what would be the intake booking area for those folks who are going to ultimately likely end up in custody. So part of how we will both reduce the demands and costs associated with that new intake booking facility will be with an eye towards those sorts of opportunities, and it also allows for us to more quickly funnel to non-custody status anyone who we think is never going to come into our custody.
Great, thank you. That makes complete sense. And just in closing, I just want to just underscore the Sheriff's Office will continue to be prepared to pivot, adjust our resources and staffing allocations to continue to find efficiencies on current operations within our current facilities, and certainly as we go down this path to help accommodate this transition.
Damon, to your comments, I think absolutely this plan is designed to account for, as part of the phasing, constant revisiting of our jail population projections for exactly the reason you say. It also has replacement facilities enter in phases for exactly that reason as well. So we know that right now, and I'll just say the red buildings, I wish I had the slide in front of me that had all the red buildings on the Elmwood campus that are getting ready to be demolished. It begins with the demolition of what we refer to as minimum camp, because we don't hold anyone who's a minimum security person in custody by and large anymore, because of exactly the evolutions in policy that we've been talking about. Those facilities are really deteriorated. We need to tear them down. We won't be building new minimum housing units because we shouldn't be housing folks in custody if they're minimum security people. And so that wholesale demolition of minimum camp reflects what we already know today. But the phased investment in additional housing out on the Elmwood campus will allow for us, if we continue to see, which we all hope we will, a decline in our jail population, to then not make those subsequent investments and to tear down more and more of the aging facilities on the Elmwood campus, as we need ideally fewer and fewer beds. And I do just want to emphasize that even today, we're proposing a 1,400 bed reduction to really bring down and never refill beds that were built in this community decades ago when we did hold people in custody.
Alternate Public Defender, Sylvia Perez McDonald.
Thank you. First, in my almost 30 years of practice in this county, from the defense perspective, I can say without hesitation that I've never seen a leadership in our county that is more committed to the welfare and well-being of our community, and that the political motivation here is really the long-term investment in the community. The responsible thing to do is what I think the board is leaning to do, which is to invest in the infrastructure that is legally mandated, and it's not a choice. And I know that from my perspective. I also know that from a practical, pragmatic perspective, on a daily basis, we struggle constantly in the service of the people that are in that facility, because despite the fact that we are doing our damnness to offer as many services as possible, sometimes it's impossible to fit all the services we want because the infrastructure is so lacking. And it would be irresponsible for us to fail to address that. For instance, we now have social workers that can come into the facility and serve our clients. We have attorneys that sometimes need to see the clients. We have medical staff that are mental health or address medical needs. And when we have to turn away a lawyer or a social worker or an investigator because we don't have capacity to meet their needs, that has a practical impact. That case will be delayed. A lawyer will not see their client. And those are realities that we simply cannot ignore. I also think that the physical improvement of the building does not change culture and does not change mindsets. And that is still going to be an absolute necessity for us to focus on. And I know that we're on the right path to do that. In this report, in this session, we know that there's going to be this survey. And I know that based on the commitment from the sheriff, the commitment from our board, there's going to be a dedication to help shift the culture so that we can focus on rehabilitation and effective services. And I think that's what gives me hope, looking at this from a defense perspective and understanding that we don't want people in custody, but when they are there, we have to serve them to the best of our ability, and we simply cannot do that in the status quo.